Hello and welcome to another episode of Next Week in Gaming. This week is our August Week 4 episode, and as usual we'll be covering game releases, early access releases, deals and bundles, reviews and interviews. First up is the Humble Weekly Bundle, which is the Might and Magic Weekly Bundle, and this one is not only including the world-renowned strategy games, it also includes a bunch of other games, obviously from the same series, like Dark Messiah and stuff like that. The first tier, which is the minimum $1 tier, is quite interesting because it comes with a beta key for Heroes of Might and Magic 7. So if you did want to try out the game during beta before you buy it when it fully releases, you can always just pay $1 and get beta access and see if it's for you or not. Obviously the higher tiers come with the better games, but strangely enough, well, not really that strange to be honest, is that a lot of the newer games are on the lower tiers and a lot of the older games like Heroes of Might and Magic 3 and 4 and 5 kind of were the better games and they're on the higher tiers. So you're going to have to pay at least $8 for mainly the good games and $10 for the newer games, including a couple of expansions. Each tier has a main game of some description as well as a few expansions for each of them. The higher tiers include things like the online card game. And the second tier includes Dark Messiah, which is a pretty damn great game, so that's definitely worth it. For those of you thinking about getting into Heroes of Might and Magic for the first time, I would probably play 3, 4 or 5. Number 6 rather, is still a little bit broken online and it crashes all the time, and Ubisoft have made no attempts to ever fix that, and they probably never will. So if you do want to get into Might and Magic, definitely go for this bundle. It features a lot of the good games, just don't expect too much from the newer titles. Who knows, maybe number 7 will be pretty good. First up on the release schedule sometime soon is a game that's coming out on early access, and if Steam's upcoming list is anything to go by, it could be sooner than you think. This is a game called Cat Interstellar, C-A-T, capitals. And it reckons it's going to be in early access until November time, so it won't be in there for long. This is going to be primarily a story-driven game, although the developers have specifically said they don't want this to be a walking simulator, so there's going to be plenty of puzzles and activity for you to do instead of just roaming around and reading logs. You'll be taking control of the Dog V4 drone. It's a maintenance drone, and your job is basically to keep all of the gear going that's supposedly terraforming this planet somewhere in Kepler system. And of course, as well as doing your general maintenance and all these random puzzles, you'll be discovering what the sort of past and the history and the story of this planet is like. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding this game, and there's not a whole lot that's been explained. We're not sure whether the whole story will be released in early access, although they reckon that all they'll be doing is just a lot of polishing, basically. It's only going to be about an hour in length, but don't let that discourage you, because there are better games that have quite short story, maybe less than an hour. Stuff like Stanley Parable surprised a lot of people, so it looks like it could be an interesting game. Next we have the release of the spiritual successor to Evoland by Shiro Games, which is Evoland 2. This one's hitting Steam next week on Tuesday the 25th of August, and it has a full title, which is A Slight Case of Space-Time Continuum Disorder. This is, of course, pretty much of the same of the original Evoland's gameplay, with hopefully new exploration areas, new quests, new characters, and all that good stuff. For those who haven't played Evoland before, this game is all about time travel. You'll be jumping back and forth between sort of modern eras-ish around video games, and your graphic style of the video game you're playing will change based on the era that you're in. So you'll be moving from places as far back as no-colour LCD screens on the Game Boy Classic and up to modern times. And if you've seen any of the screenshots, you'll see some different styles of gameplay, like Mortal Kombat style stuff. I'd say the graphics would go as far as modern-ish, sort of last-gen Xbox 360 sort of stuff. Not quite AAA looking stuff, but still, it's a really cool game. It's done pretty well in the first place, and it's an interesting title for those that are into that sort of thing. Next up is another game which is releasing on Tuesday the 25th of August. It's by Longbow Games, and it's Hegemony 3, The Clash of the Ancients. This is set just before when the Romans took over pretty much half the world. You'll be following that timeline and deciding whether the Romans, the Etruscans or the Gaelics ended up taking over most of the continents. And basically this is much of the same stuff. It's more of a polish and an update to all of the previous games. They say it's going to have 4 times the details of the previous Hegemony game, which is pretty good for existing players. It's going to have loads of new units, as well as a few extra unique features like faction abilities. There's 25 plus factions, 30 plus new units. As usual, you can scroll out on the enormous strategy map, which again is going to have a lot more detail than before. Basically, it's a lot of the same game, just improved overall. So if you've played Hegemony games before, you're probably going to enjoy this one just as much as the rest, and there's some extra for those people who are wanting a little bit more. Finally, on the release schedule for next week is another game that's coming out on Tuesday the 25th of August. This is another series game as well. It's by Might and Delight, and it's called Shelter 2. For those who have already played the first game, this is much of the same with a few additional extras and differences. Instead of the first one, you will be playing a lynx mother and you'll be looking after her cubs. Obviously there'll be a few extra features like stamina, jumping, lots and lots of different types of prey to kill and eat. And of course this game is going to be highlighting the real truth about animal mothers and their young and surviving in nature, and the unfortunate truth that not all of them survive. This has always fit into a rather niche market, but I'm glad that they've done well enough to make a sequel, so this one's coming out next week for those of you that like those sorts of games. Lastly, we have our review title for next week, which will be out on Thursday the 27th of August. This is a game by BitHell Games and it's called Volume. Obviously with it featuring a British legend, I couldn't help but take it up for a review. This will have you playing Robin of Locksley in a slightly more futuristic setting, but still in the near future, in a very artistic setting, if I do say so myself. Amongst a couple of hundred levels, you won't be killing, you'll just be trying to stealth your way through all the levels with a few bits of gadgets, which will increase as your renown increase. There's also a level editor for those people who want to make their own levels, and you can dump those into the campaign too, so hopefully it should be a pretty interesting review title. I'm hoping it's good, so that it puts a British legend on the world map and makes it look a little bit more interesting. That's it from us on NextPowerUp for this week. Join us next week on Thursday for our usual review, and next week on Saturday for our next Week in Gaming episode. As usual, leave your comments in the section below of what you've been playing. There's a fair few interesting releases as well as a fair few bundles last week. And that's it from us. Join us next week, and thanks for watching.